I think some part of me always knew I'd leave my hometown before I was an adult, that I would need to say goodbye before I was ready. And I think that made me pay attention to everything.
Like what we think of as low art, you know, like comics and Star Wars, and you know, we call this pop culture, but it really was our culture, and he, you know, just takes it to a different level, and the cumulative effect of the whole book is that we get a complete picture of, you know, like life and growing up in the 70s and 80s.
And dropped her string for a shovel. The two of us blinking, and she took in a chunk. Bits of briar and cheatgrass poking between her lips. A peck of oat fruit clung to her chin as she nodded for us to run along. And my sister and I kept looking back, neither of us believing. Part of my hometown is really in every poem in Mudcakes. I constantly love revisiting, you know, the places that really inspired me growing up. The creek where I skipped rocks as a kid, or my old school where I would, you know, pretend, you know, during the day that I could turn into Superman just to impress the ponytail girl in front of me in algebra class. Even the diner in Geneva, Ohio, where my mother and father met in 1965. It's all there. It's all part of Mudcakes.
Oh, Jason was always creative. I remember him coming down the stairs very quietly on a Saturday morning, as to not wake anybody else up in the house. He was always very considerate. Then he would take his books that he was working on, and he'd spread the papers out in front of him, and he'd have his box of cereal in front of the TV and his bowl and everything, and he'd be watching cartoons, and he'd be eating his cereal and pouring and pouring and pouring and writing and writing and writing, and it was a Saturday morning ritual, and he was 11 years old.
He's brought that same kind of loving detail to all of the poems in Mudcakes, and he stayed really true to that vision throughout his ups and downs as a writer, and all the rejections and the successes.
Much like millions of small town kids today who flock to Harry Potter, I too was drawn to the magical and the extraordinary. I grew up in Middle America at a time when spiritual guidance came from Luke Skywalker. And of course, Kiss.
A lot of Jason's poems speak to me because they feel really real. Even if you haven't had the exact experiences that he's talking about, you recognize the fact that there's truth in them. Sometimes.
I never ate mud.
I think the one thing I'd really love for readers to take away from Mudcakes is that poetry can be about real lives and real experiences. It doesn't always have to be archaic or scary, but something that's actually accessible and that people might even recognize themselves in the end.